and I'm going to give you just a minute to make sure that I see that you can see me on all of the channels. And we're going to jump right in. Thank you so much for being here with me today on this beautiful Saturday. I am seeing the broadcast begin to come up live. All of the channels. We go. There we go. So we got one up. And okay, this is number 2. If you are watching me live right now, please be sure to jump into the comments and let me know it. And if you're watching the replay, let me know that too, because I need to know how you found me. In the meantime, this is a great day to be together. A lot of stuff is happening in the world of education and just period right now as we all kind of deal with this pandemic together. And I just want to kind of to go live to give you guys a few tools that you can use. All right. So now I've seen myself on all my devices. I know that you can see me too. And you're welcome to jump into the comments and I'll be happy to chat with you and answer your questions live right here, right now. So I made a post on all my social media channels this week saying, what would you like for me to talk about? Okay, there's a lot of things that I would like to talk about, but I love to try to make sure that these broadcasts are important to you. All right. And so what kept coming back to me is people are pulling their hair out about the adjustments to the pandemic. And I keep getting questions from parents who are worried about how to educate their kids right now. But I want you to know that what I'm going to talk about today is useful whether you're dealing with the stress of educating your kids, whether you're dealing with the stress of adjustments on your job, all of the things that are kind of impacting your life right now as it relates to this pandemic, how to get a grip on that so that you can start making progress. So anyway, I want to thank you again. I'm going to reintroduce myself. I'm Dr. Tarika Lewis, otherwise known as Dr. Lou, your partner in success and progress. And I help people and organizations to succeed using education and other tools. And thank you again for joining me today. If you haven't already done so, jump in those comments and let me know where you are watching from and if you're watching me live or via the replay. All right. And so we're going to talk today about finding and exercising your power in a pandemic. In particular, we're going to talk about how to start making progress and succeeding and how to stop stressing. So if that's you right now, you know things are feeling kind of crazy right now, then you are in the right place at the right time. And it should be just about all of us, right? Because we're all dealing with the pandemic and the wildness that is happening in the world right now because of it. So anyway, every day I'm getting questions about what to do or complaints, right? About what's being done, just in general, but in particular in education. And my heart kind of goes out to parents right now. But at the same token, this is a good time to give you guys these tools that you could have been using all along. And there's no better time like the present to get started. So first of all, let's acknowledge the circumstances. People are pulling their hair out. And as soon as I see people stressing out, the first thing that comes to mind for me is sort of like the serenity mantra that a lot of people who are recovering tend to use, which is they want to have the serenity to accept the things they can't change. They want the courage to change the things that they can. They want the wisdom to know the difference. But I always take it a step further. Just because you can change things doesn't mean that you should. Right. But one of the biggest stressors that we can do something about is our kids and how they're encountering and dealing with responses to this pandemic, and in particular school, which is kind of everything for them, right? School is their job. School is what they're doing in life for more hours in a day than they're doing other things a lot of times. It doesn't necessarily have to be that way, but let's talk about it, right? So I'll do lives on other topics as you guys ask me, but you keep asking me about this particular topic, and I just want to kind of give you this information now. I apologize for the sun. It is the middle of the day, and the sun it seems to be liking our broadcast right now, so I'm trying to make sure it doesn't blind you. But we're going to get right into it. So here are some of the things that I keep hearing from parents of school-age children. I hate online learning. Homeschooling is too hard. I don't want my kid in the classroom. And I'm trying this or that mode of education right now, and it's not working. What do I do? I'm also hearing people complain about the same things that as it relates to their job. I hate working from home, or I hate going into the office. This is too hard. What do I do? And here's what I say to all of that. First of all, before I get into a response, I want you to comment with one emoji or one word that kind of tells me what your circumstances are in either your child's education or work right now? Like, how is this pandemic hitting you? Again, just give me an emoji. I just kind of want to see where you are and how you're feeling about all of this in the comments, okay? And if you put questions in the comments, I will be sure to respond to them. All right. Now, and let me say this while you guys are thinking about that. You really don't have to just accept what's offered. I know things are crazy right now. I know schools seem to be losing their mind. And for the first time in a lot of our lives, the systems that were in place to take care of us, the schools, the governments, and all those other things kind of seem to be out of control. And that's part of what makes this time so scary. But remember, you do not have to just accept what's offered to you for free. You also have options. You always have options. So step number one for dealing with insanity during times like this is to put things in perspective. Let's put things in perspective. Number one, you're not alone. Most of the country is experiencing the same level of frustration as you. As a matter of fact, because 90% of parents of school-age children have their schools in public, kids in public school on any regular given year, that means 90% of the adults in this country that have school-age children are feeling just like you, because the schools are by and large struggling with this whole thing big time. All right. So not only are you not alone, but people are pretty much going through the exact same thing. Now, here's the deal. When things are crazy like this, it's important to remember one thing, that during this time, there are going to be systems and people and businesses that kind of rise from the ashes and succeed in ways that you never imagined before. Those will be the people that you'll be reading books about in about 10 years. In the meantime, probably less than that because of the way things churn right now, 5 years or less. But it's important to also understand that there are going to be people that fall apart, and they're going to say that this pandemic or these times that they are the reasons why. And I always tell my kids, both my children that I'm raising, my children, as well as the children that I teach and work with, who are also considered my babies, I always tell them the world is full of two types of people at the end of the day. Everybody goes through stuff, but you got the group of people that everybody's watching because they want to know, how did you succeed in spite of all that? And you got the group of people that nobody's listening to because they are lamenting about how terrible everything was when they went through what they went through and how that's the reason why life sucks. And I'm going to tell you now, those same people were complaining about life before the pandemic. They're going to be complaining about it after the pandemic. Only now it's going to be because of the pandemic until something else happens. And I'm not saying that to judge people. I'm saying that to say, so we got to put our success caps on and decide we're going to fight through this or we're not. Now, here's the deal. It's going to be uncomfortable. Everything has changed. Before this pandemic hit, I'd say late last year, I did a blog post about industrial revolutions. Okay. And I know if you're not a history buff, it would sound like it would be boring, but I really did kind of tie it into the fact that periodically the whole world changes the way it does everything. People change the way they go to work. They change the type of work that they do. People change the way money is spent. We change the way we transport ourselves from one place to another. We change the way we communicate. Those are called industrial revolutions. Why? Because industry changes, and with it, everything else in the world changes. Now, sometimes those industrial revolutions are triggered by a main event, like a war or a Great Depression, which could have been triggered by war, or a pandemic. And in this particular situation, I had said, it's been a long time since we had an industrial revolution. It's been a long time since we changed the way that we do everything. And that's part of what was the problem for me with schools. Being an educator, being a doctor of education, which is different than just being an educator. Not better or worse, just different. Because now my lens is, let me look at this, let me study this thing, understand it better, and push the culture forward. Looking at education, it still was pretty much being done the way it was back in the day when the school mom taught the kids at the church house and they walked to be with her all day, and she was basically babysitting them and teaching them the 3 R's. We haven't changed enough in order to really propel ourselves forward into the world that we were living in before the pandemic. And the world was pulling, right, for us to change the way that we did a lot of things, not just school. That's why we find ourselves hearing fights going on about the coal industry versus, how we're going to do energy and all that other stuff. The whole world was pushing humanity to change the way it was doing things. And humanity was saying, no, thanks. I don't want this change. Well, nobody likes change. Nobody likes change like that. So everybody resists it. Now, having said that, having accepted that, the point is, it's going to be uncomfortable. So when this major change hit, we're going to look at how it impacted education, because you guys are pulling your hair out about your child's education, right? But this could also be about the way you work and everything else. So keep that in mind. But everybody was saying that they were homeschooling at first because their kid came home. and they were doing school. And the parents said, I hate homeschooling. And then when they went back to school, and a lot of school systems didn't feel comfortable with the kids coming and sitting in the classroom at first, for whatever the reason, then everybody said they were doing online learning, and they hated that too. What was the common theme? They hated it. People hate change. It's going to be uncomfortable. But I'm here to tell you, you were not experiencing homeschooling if you had your child in a public school or a private school and they just came home. That's not what you were experiencing. You were not experiencing online learning as it is really meant to be done. Just because your child is looking at a teacher online right now or Monday through Friday or whenever that happens. That's not how this works. There are people who have homeschooled for years. And I'm not just talking about people who do it, and are isolated from the rest of the world. No, people actually decide to take their kids' education into their own hands. There are people who've been learning online for years, and there are companies who've been doing it and doing it well. And there are free, easy options for doing that. We'll talk about that later. The bottom line is, as we put things into perspective, what you've been experiencing is the Band-Aid on a broken leg response to a pandemic that nobody was ready for. And yes, we are all uncomfortable. Now that we've gotten that reality out of the way, that was number one. Face the reality of the situation. This is uncomfortable. We have needs that have to be met. The world's going to keep on spinning, but it can't spin the way that it did before because that's killing people or causing problems or whatever you want to say, however you want to frame this pandemic. I'm not here to argue with you about your political beliefs or whatever. I'm here to talk to you about how to deal with the situation that we currently face. So that's number one. We face it. We put things in perspective. Number two, you have to evaluate your options. I did a post earlier this week or last week on the fact that successful people evaluate their options and make conscious decisions. They do things on purpose. Successful people don't just float in life, because how are you going to get where you want to go if you don't pick a destination? So if you want to be successful, you need to decide what you want. And that goes without saying. And then you need to evaluate your options for getting there. And that includes school. Otherwise, it's just like if you show up at somebody's house or restaurant unexpected, the meal you get is going to be thrown together. The hospitality you get is going to be rushed and hurried because they were not prepared for you. So they did not prepare for you. So they will not be giving you the top of the line. And that is what is happening with school. That's what's happening with many of your jobs, all of that. Now, you can take the bull by the horns. You can take the steering wheel of this car right now by saying, these are the things I want and need, and these are the things I hate about this current situation that don't align with that. Now, let me evaluate my options for getting what I want and need. And in the case of your child's education, let me look at the school options. There are so many online and alternative education options, as well as private school options with small classrooms that can actually address social distancing matters. There are ways you can educate your child regardless of the option you decide. Stop accepting free stuff and being mad when it doesn't come to you like the paid stuff comes. Okay, if you get a free car, chances are it's not going to ride like a Benz. That's just the reality. So that doesn't mean that you have to come out of the pocket. My point is, at least look around and see what your options are in that category, whether it's free, low budget, or whatever the case may be. All right, so having said that, we're going to evaluate our options. Now, comment with an emoji or a one-word phrase with how you're feeling about that. If you feel satisfied with your current situation or your options, or if you know that evaluating your options means you're going to have to start looking. All right. And as you do that, I want you to really think about, are you satisfied for real? And do you know what you want? Because now we get to the silver lining of this cloud of a pandemic. And that's that everybody is kind of having to evaluate and say, and stop and look at things. If we're talking about your kids' education, you know, the reason that many parents are freaking out is because you're looking at your child sit in front of that computer bored. You're looking at your child sit in front of a computer and cry or come home from school. Let me just say, those of you that sent your kid back to school, you know good and well, just like everybody else, they didn't go back to the school that they left last year. School, everything is different. Hello, industrial revolution has occurred. So here's the thing. You can either try to ride this out like a lot of people are doing, and it's still not going to go back to normal, but you're going to get somebody else's decision for you and yours. Or you can take the bull by the horns and figure out how to navigate this new territory, this new terrain. And that is what I suggest you do. But either way, understand that things are going to be different. They are never going to be the same. When you experience something this major, it is never going to be the same, regardless of what you think you are experiencing. All right. So I have an evaluation checklist for those of you that are not sure where to begin with all of that. I've had a lot of people reach out to me for it. I am providing it for free because I think that we need to make more informed decisions because the stakes are too high right now. All right. So if you need an evaluation checklist, whether it's school evaluation or career evaluation or whatever, just be sure to drop a comment, DM me, depending on how you're seeing me, whatever works for you, but get to me and I will get it to you. Just let me know that you want it, DM me your email address and you got it. All right. So we have talked about evaluating your options. Before that, we talked about putting things in perspective. Number 3, we're almost through here, guys, is make a decision and act on it. I'm not here to quote Tony Robbins, but I know he talks a lot about massive action. That's one thing that I can tell you. Once you make a decision, you've evaluated your options, you made a good, strong decision. If you don't take real action on it, you're going to be sitting here crying about the same thing 10 years from now or ignoring it and trying to pretend like it doesn't exist. But either way, the things aren't going to change the way you want them to. So you got to make a decision and then take action on it. And if you need to reach out for help to do that, then do that. Don't sit there and do the same thing every year. That's what New Year's resolutions are. You sit there, you make the same promises to yourself every year or a few different ones with slight changes. And then by by the end of January, early February, 80% of people have already dropped it by the wayside. The other 20% drop out by the mid-June, middle of the year. So that's not working. Reach out to somebody, get you an accountability partner. Reach out to me if you need to. That's what I do. Okay. But the bottom line is don't sit there by yourself and complain. This is too major. The world is shifting this time around. This is not just another year where you don't feel happy with your life and you know you need to do something about it. This is not a DeVry commercial where you're going to sit on the couch, watch TV, and one day you're just going to change your life. That's not how this works. You need to take action. You need to decide that you're going to level up in and through and out of this pandemic, so that you are one of those success stories. Because I can honestly tell you that every single major shift, things fell away and new things came in their place. When we went from horse and buggies to automated cars, don't you think there were a lot of companies that shoed horses, provided horses, built wagons, and provided all the parts to that? Those companies went out of business. They're never coming back. We are never going to go back to horse and buggy days. So complaining about it's not going to work. So fast forward to this car industry that was so big and so powerful and so much of a juggernaut in our economy that a couple of presidents ago, they decided to rescue it, because if they didn't, the entire national economy was going down. So it went from being not in existence and people laughing about it. I'm not a huge fan of Henry Ford one way or another, but one of his quotes was, stop asking people for what they need and provide what your ingenuity provides. Because if you don't, as he said, if I had to listen to people, they would have just wanted a better horse and buggy. They would have never accepted the car. So I say that to say, if you're not going to choose to lunge forward and be the next great thing in your own life, then this pandemic is probably going to be more of a nightmare than it has to be for you, because things are falling away. We are not going to go back into some of the things that are being lost during this pandemic. And that's what you need to realize. But that's not to scare you. That's to tell you to make a decision. Now is a great time to change your life in whatever way you start moving in the direction you want to move. Things are easier to access than they've ever been before in terms of getting the tools that you need, the training you need, the education you need to become whatever it is you want to be. So choose to do so. All right. And then once you've made a decision and acted on it, you think your life, that's over? You think that's how this works? No, successful people have to be willing to fail sometimes too, or be willing to look to see if they failed. All right. So once you've made your decision, you're going to now evaluate it for effectiveness and make changes as needed. And that's the final step that separates the sometimes successful from highly successful people, is they are always doing that. They're always gaining perspective, evaluating the options, making a decision. Actually, studies show that a person that makes a decision quickly but is willing to change if needed is going to be far more successful than a person that takes forever to make a decision because they never even get started. They try out fewer options, and it's trial and error in a lot of ways in this life. Most people who are highly successful, I'm not just talking about money, this is not their first effort at being successful, right? So make changes as needed. Give yourself permission to fail, and in doing so, you increase your chances of succeeding. All right. So was this information valuable? I want you to comment if there is any one of these steps that you feel like you could use to be more successful, to grow, to lunge ahead, to navigate this pandemic, to get your child's education on track, whatever the thing is that you're pulling your hair out about. All right. If you have comments or questions, I will be happy to either drop another video, go live, or respond to you directly, depending on what your question is and whether or not you want it to be kept private. But I just want to thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for spending time with me on this Saturday live. It is your girl, Dr. Tarika Lewis. And I just want you to remember that I am here to help you succeed using education and other tools. Until next time, I love you. I believe in you. And for now, I am out.